Welcome back to episode 139 of the Disorganized Wizards Club podcast. My name is Alex. I'm here as always with Adam.
Hello.
And Cam.
Good afternoon.
And we're a group of Ottawa-based players that play just about anything and everything we can qualify for. We talk about decks, tournament stories, just about anything to help you and ourselves get better at Magic. What?
Okay, so this was take 2 of the intro, right? Because we had an audio issue on the first attempt.
Yeah.
However, it was not 12:01 p.m. And so when I said hello the first time, Cam said good morning. And in the second intro, even though it was exactly 2 minutes later, he said good afternoon on this one on take 2. Because
I was wondering why.
that's why I burst out laughing so hard. Because
It's 12:01 now.
it's 12:01 after the audio mistake. Because he said good morning, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess it is morning. And then on the next attempt, he's like, good afternoon.
That one went right over my head. I wasn't even paying attention.
He said it. I looked right at the clock and realized that he probably also was just staring at the clock.
Oh, yeah.
It's on another level over there, right?
I don't want to speak inaccurately. It's not a heartfelt greeting unless it's correct.
How would they ever know? People don't know what time we record these things at.
It's
They do know.
I'd be guilty.
You would know, and that's the problem.
Yeah, it would haunt me.
Yeah. Honesty is the policy around here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. How you guys doing this week? I haven't played a lot of Magic. I've been gone. Was away at the cottage all weekend.
Yeah,
Escaped from the world.
How was it?
But it was great.
You have a lot of fun?
I had a lot of fun. It was a good time. It's always fun to just unplug and not,
Just live in the moment, dude.
Yeah.
Not a cell phone in sight.
not think about anything but how many Coronas am I going to drink this day.
Yeah.
That is not
Let
what
me
I've
tell
been
you,
doing.
I drank a lot of them.
I've been, DWC in the summer are really bad at Magic things. You'd think, in theory, especially given Cam and I's career, a lot of people would, assume that, oh, hey, they have the summer to off, quote unquote.
Yeah, but I was thinking about this recently, and I know why I feel busier in the summer. Because during the semester, when I have a schedule, like you go to class Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then there are assignments, and you do those. And those are also like assigned at certain times. And then that feels busy. You're like, oh, I'm taking classes. Like, that's a lot. And then in the summer, you're like, I'm not doing anything. And I constantly feel like I'm behind. So I end up spending more time doing things because I feel like I'm not doing anything. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The holes in a schedule. The fact that there is a schedule makes me feel like I'm busy, even when I'm actually spending less time working.
Yeah. Well, I also just have been working like crazy too.
Yeah.
Just trying to get a bunch of stuff finished and
For the new school year? Or
no, just publications for the postdoc research I'm doing. Meeting with my supervisor all the time. Like I had a long meeting yesterday, and I'm just actually doing tons of work. And then also I was gone for 6 weeks, and then we were on vacation at the cottage, and you guys were at the show. Like we're just in the summer is just too. It's like a weird combination of vacation plus working in weird spurts. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's
Yeah, no, I definitely have been doing more work in the last 2 or 3 weeks than I did. It felt like in the last semester.
Surprisingly this summer I've been finished a bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. I'm so busy. You'd think I'd just be a lazy bum. Well, I was going to come to the cottage with you, but I skipped it because I was trying to finish this article, which I did finish.
I decided to be a responsible adult.
The weather also syncs up with at least my own and probably Adam's schedule better, because in the winter when I get to campus at 2 and then it's dark at 5, I'm like, well, that was a good day, and then I go home. But here when I get to campus at 2, it's still light until 9 or 10, so I actually do work all day, for a day's worth of work.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, actually taking advantage of the sun,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a bunch of standard this past week. SEG Worcester, won by Mono Red.
Nice.
Like that pronunciation.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, actually, I was pretty good, actually.
Nailed
Oh, you have it spelt well in the notes.
Yeah.
WOOOSTR.
Still pretty good pronunciation there, yeah.
Mono Red taking down week 1 SCG.
Yeah, shocker.
Blown away.
This reminds me, I saw a tweet. It's what is the hardest thing for you to say in a relationship? 1, I love you. 2, we need to end this. 3, Worcester sauce. 4, have you been cheating on me?
Yeah. So many people. Worcestershire.
Yeah, we're Chestershire.
Worcestershire. It's a tough one. It's a brain buster.
Bit of a bamboozler.
Yeah, it's a brain buster.
Kind of funny. The biggest, huge standard, what is it? 8 sets now?
Yeah,
9
8 set
sets?
standard, yeah.
8 set standard.
Wait, is it 8?
I don't know.
Big.
Just throwing a number out there.
To quote my
It's
math
big.
teacher from my first year of undergrad. Anything bigger than 7 is too much.
8+.
Yeah.
Mono red taking down the finals against mono blue.
Yeah, I mean, not surprised. Okay, well, you
You
phrase
love
it
to
that
see
way.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The mono blue, I'm actually, I think last week we were talking and we had mentioned that we had seen a large uptick actually in the amount of mono blue we'd played against and seen, right?
Mhm.
We both sort of noted, hey, 'cause I think you said, have you noticed that there's a lot more mono blue again? I said, yeah. It's because of Spectral Sailor, right?
Yeah, Spectral Sailor was a big pickup for this deck. And I don't know. I think just a lot of people were not playing as much Teferi as they were before the core set came out. And Mono Blue had a real tough time against that card.
Yeah, Teferi 3 is a tough out for...
But with less Teferi 3s floating around, Mono Blue can really take advantage of it. Because, I mean, even looking at this this top 8, like how many Teferis are in this top 8? 8 maybe?
Yeah, well, like 2 decks are playing Teferi.
Yeah, 2 decks are playing Teferi.
Yeah, that's it.
So significantly
Which is
less.
a huge decrease. There was a time where it was in every deck in the top 8, right?
Yeah, we'd see, 5 out of 8 Esper decks in the top 8.
Humorously, it lines up actually quite well versus all these decks. So,
Yeah.
like, it's very good versus Feather.
Mm-hmm. Feather's one of those decks, man. I think it's so bad.
I also think it's horrendous.
It got God's willing, though.
Yeah,
I mean, God's willing, super, super good in that deck, but
oh yeah, it's nuts.
man,
I don't get it because I think that deck's bad. I also
Yeah.
agree. I don't know why. I can never lose to it.
yeah,
It feels like 1 of 3 games every time I'll get nut drawn
mhm.
and they'll stomp me, but I'll win the match every single time.
Yeah, I just have not been impressed with that deck at all. But
So I think part of the reason is if you know how to play against it, you just have to assess your hand. Like, okay, do I have to go now while they're tapped out, or can I sort of play a game where I trade for God's Willings and trade some of my life total to run them out of cards and make sure that they don't, because you just need to keep Feather off from like rebuying things.
yeah,
And if I can keep them off that, then they can't win. Do you know what I mean? So it's all about sort of how your hand lines up playing against them. And it's pretty easy to just run them out of gas. Like, that's what I found playing against the deck. I don't know about like your experience playing against it, but I've sort of just assessed my hand every single time of, okay, how do I have to play this? Do I have to just run my removal into God's Willings on my own turn to like, get their hand empty while they don't have Feather? Or can I sort of just wait and get them? Like it, and then, you play either way that works out best for you. And I've just never had a problem. They always just seem to run out of gas and die.
I feel like
Yeah.
the decks that Feather was playing against, at least if we consider this top 8 sort of representative of the field, didn't have the cards needed to do that, though. Like, Stelly was just pulling up the Teamer Elementals list to look at their removal. All they have is Shock and Lightning Strike. So, like, if a Feather resolves, it probably locks them out.
yeah. These vampire decks are pretty stone cold to it as well. Cast down doesn't
nothing.
kill it.
Yeah.
One of Mortify in both decks.
And these are creature strategies like elementals and vampires. So, like, if they get you under a Reckless Rage lock with a Feather, like, you just lose.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, I think the decks, before Core Set came out that really preyed on Feather were all the Esper builds. And with a lot less of those floating around, I guess Feather can...
I think Feather's really good against creatures.
Yeah, it can do really well in this kind of early Core Set metagame where everyone are just trying out a bunch of new strategies and new creatures, but...
And, like, if Simic Flash was popular, it isn't in this top 8, but I feel like it was around this tournament. If it's trying to spend its turn flashing in a 4/4, again, Reckless Rage is 1 mana, 4 damage. Like, probably I feel like it's the suite that Feather brought would line up well in this field.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I shouldn't say. I just like every time I seem to play against it, I just smash. But maybe I'm
It definitely has exploitable weaknesses.
playing the right things, or I don't know, getting lucky against them. But yeah, it can definitely line up. Like if it gets the right cards, and in the meta, like here, it probably looks really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was just good against the opponents that happened to have this tournament.
Yeah, I kind of wish I knew how many showed up, but
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
seeing a lot of that card around too. Sorry, I just know you had a list up with Bant Ramp, which has Voracious Hydra. See a lot of that card lurking around.
Yeah. I think it's pretty good.
I can't tell. Every time I've played against it, it's been useless against me. but I don't know. I might have just had really good draws against it the times I played against it.
Someone I was talking to in our Discord was discussing, well, first he was asking us about Leyline of Abundance decks, but then he was discussing how he was trying them in like sort of a Hydra's build with Voracious Hydra and the other one, Golagos.
Yeah.
And saying that he 3-0'd some event, he took it 2 in paper, and that it's been doing really well with him. So maybe there's something there with Hydras.
Show me that deck too. It looked pretty sweet.
Yeah, I didn't play against a Leyline version. Like, he wasn't all in on ramping. That's probably why it wasn't good. I feel like if you have Leyline in that, you know what I mean? You just play the Hydras.
Yeah.
We just need Cavernous Souls, man, for like on Hydra.
Hail Hydra.
Yeah, there's nuts.
I mean, no one's playing counterspells right now outside of the Simic Flash deck, though.
Yeah, but they're playing a heap of them. You know what I mean? And Mono Blue.
Yeah.
Mono Blue also
I'll just
playing
play Band with Teferi. Easy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, exactly. Just shut them out. Yeah.
I feel like we're kind of getting to the point now, whereas if your deck can have a good build and that can splash Teferi, you should just do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Like,
I hate that we're saying that. Like, I kind of hate Teferi 3 already.
I mean, let's be honest, it sucks for the format. Like, the card's really warping and awkward play patterns against it. But, like, we're past the point now where people have been trying out all their new sweet cards and trying out different decks. But, like, just go back to Teferi. It was the best thing to do before Core Set, and it's still one of the best things to be doing. Like,
I think that a lot of the decks have a hard time against it too, that are even in this top 8 of the SCG, for example. Except perhaps the Elementals deck, because they just don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, if you bounce their stuff, it's actively bad for you. Because they all have ETB triggers. But if you look at all the other decks, they don't really have ETB triggers, and they're going to get punished for it, right?
Yeah, Vampires has tokens you can bounce. Boros Feather, like, they have to have God's Willing. They can't have any other protection spell or their creature gets bounced.
Mono Blue just can't function with a Teferi in play.
Yeah.
Yeah, the issue is just, can you protect your Teferi?
Yeah.
But, you know, if the decks that play Teferi are usually designed to also be able to protect it a little bit, so.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of people move back to Esper Hero now. I mean, it had a really good results the past couple weeks. Won one of the Fandom Legends events. It won the Mox qualifier.
Yeah, I mean,
people just kind of forgot about it for a bit and wanted to try sweet new cards, but, like, it's still really good.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, it's I guess probably the quote unquote, you know, like tier 1 deck.
I think it's probably just the best deck in the format.
Yeah, but it has some like tough matchups, right?
It has some tough matchups, and I'd say it's one of the tougher decks to sideboard with. I think it's just across the board one of the more consistent decks.
It's got a lot of sideboard different sideboard strategies that you can choose to bring.
Yeah, exactly. Based on like what your opponents are doing, whether you keep in heroes or not. Like, there's a lot more. It's a lot less straightforward, I guess, is what I'm saying when it comes to your sideboarding plans, and it's tough in that sense.
Sideboarding plans might have even gotten easier. Maybe not for Esper Hero, but I think across the board, because so many decks have adopted these hate cards.
Yeah. And those ones are pretty
easy to sideboard with. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like with Esper Hero, they have access to insane sideboard hate cards now.
Yeah. You could play Noxious Grasp. You could play any of the blue cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Noxious Grasp is a big part of it. Like, that's a good one.
That's a good one. I think the list.
Decks that get to play Fry, though, pretty lucky.
Yeah. The list that won the Mox, though, is playing the only new cards in the entire 75 are 2 Temple of Silence in the main deck.
Yeah. Otherwise, he's playing very similar to Shota's list.
Yeah. This is the list that won the Mox, and the list BBD used to win Fandom Legends is the exact same 75.
Yeah.
I'm still
Elite Guard Mage. I like that.
Yeah. I'm still not sure if I'm on board with this one Bolas Citadel in the main, and there's another one in the sideboard, because, like, I don't feel like you have enough life game to really capitalize on it if you draw it later in the game.
You'd be surprised how much your Oath of Kaya life gain with your Elite Guard Mages add up.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, there's a lot of games I'm just like playing a normal game, and all of a sudden I'm at 30 life. And just because you're killing everything your opponent does, Teferi slows your opponent down, and then you just have this huge life buffer.
Yeah, and I guess the idea is similar to Command the Dreadhorde, is that if you have any life hanging around, like, you can use it to win the game. So
yeah.
But then why not just play a second Command the Dreadhorde?
I don't know. Boluses, it'll probably better in a few other matchups.
Or if you just curve into it and then there's really nothing in the graveyard, or like it's
That's
not
true.
a creature heavy matchup. Yeah, exactly. Like
Okay.
and also, or you exile certain things, or you don't want to. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of reasons. There are lots of times where Command the Dreadhorde is not good.
That makes sense.
What if someone Ashioks you?
Ooh. Good thing I got this library.
Yeah, exactly. Well, some of it.
So what do you guys think of this mono red deck that took down the tournament? I know we talked a little bit about it in the pre-show. That if you want access to, head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/DWC Podcast. All patrons get access to the DWC Discord for as low as $1. We have other sweet tier benefits like custom tokens, which are on the way for a second batch. We've got a new stretch goal for DWC t-shirts. Check it out.
Those should be sweet. Also we play other games on there too. I've been some TFT with other people in the Discord, I'm using the voice channel to play some other games as well. So it's pretty sweet. Talking a lot about different standard decks, playing some cool different standard decks, even just from people in the Discord. Been playing a lot of people's brews lately in the Discord. Man, let me tell you, some of our listeners are, there are listeners that are obviously very intelligent. But,
a lot of high IQ people in the DWC Discord.
But some of the decks that people have been posting in there, I've been playing a lot, and man, they are sweet. Been doing really well with all of them.
Agree. But so this main deck, mono red, Chandra Spitfire, Ember Hauler, replacing your Wizard's Lightning and the Viashino Pyromancer. What do you think about this new take on mono red?
I feel like Pyromancer just has to be better than Spitfire, but I could be wrong. Like I'm not a Smark. I'm not a mono red guy, I'll play mono red once in a while, but if I'm like frustrated, and
I think
I'd have to refer to a mono red expert,
I get the appeal of Spitfire. You could make an argument that it's a similar style of card as Runaway Steamkin, where its face value with no other input is really bad, and because it needs to stick around to be good, you then argue that it just dies a lot. Your opponents will just kill it. But then you could also make the argument that now you have 8 of these effects, right? So like, they have to kill my Runaway Steamkin, or I'll make a bunch of mana. And then you play a Chandra Spitfire. Well, do they have another removal spell? If they do, they have to kill it. And it's this type of card that if it sticks, then it's just like a boatload of damage or a boatload of value. So maybe you're trying to overload on that effect. And +3/+0 is a lot. Like your Spare Fanatical Firebrands now do 4. If you have Ember Haulers hanging around, they're now Lava Axes. That's a lot of damage.
Yeah, it is a flyer too, so hard to block. I don't know. It seems a little cute for me. I think I'd just rather play a few more Frenzies, maybe some Pyromancers.
I think whether it sticks around in the deck is just like immediately follows how much removal other decks are playing and what type of removal that is. For instance, we were asking about removal in the Elemental stacks, and they have a couple Lightning Strikes which can answer that, and then Shocks which can't. So like it's pretty good against that deck, and it flies over a lot of what they're doing. But if sort of Esper decks become more popular and start showing up more in paper, as we suspect they will, if there's more Oath of Kaias floating around, or even if Vampires adopts Oath of Kaya, that is very bad for this card, and so then you'd probably move away from it.
Yeah, I guess that's true for this tournament, specifically looking at this top 8 with a lot of the decks really trimming on removal spells. It's probably had a good tournament to really shine.
Yeah, like let's say you're playing against Vampires or Elementals. They all have about 5 removal spells, so they probably have drawn 1 by the time you've cast your Spitfire. Mm-hmm. Are they going to use it on their Steamkin or your Spitfire, or like you have 4 of each, so if you've drawn 1 of each, now they have a hard choice, right? They've got to let one of them live.
Yeah, that's true. Do you think we're going to see much more mono red now as the format grows and adapts, or do you think this was its time to shine and now we're past it?
I feel like you could beat mono red pretty easily if you want, but
before Core Set, people had figured out how to tackle mono red pretty well.
Yeah,
and I think people
like Basilica Bellhaunts and Kai's Oath of Kaias and stuff like that just sort of crush them.
Yeah, we've said this before. We said that there was some tournament where we thought for those reasons mono red wouldn't make a good showing, and then it did well.
It did better than expected, but not super well. Yeah,
it did better than expected. So I still think it will be around. I don't think it's ever going to get hated out. It can this mono red list is only playing 4 light up the stage and 1 frenzy main for card draw. As the format slows down or as people get more hateful, they can shift back to playing multiple frenzies, multiple Chandra main. So, I mean, mono red, if you like it, you can play it for the rest of the format.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's a deck that if you want, Cam's right. You just have to adjust, but this is an archetype that's staying until rotation at the very least, and probably after. But just the fact that you have so many options for which 4-drop or 3-drop card advantage you want to play. Like you can play Chandra, Firebrand Artisan or whatever. You can play Experimental Frenzy. You can play Light Up a Stage. You have all these options, and having those options, I think, sort of makes it so that mono red has, always a chance to be played.
Yeah, for a single monocolor deck, there's actually so many varied, powerful cards that it's like one of the most flexible archetypes that I think we've seen in a long time.
Right. Yeah, and even it got new sideboard tools. Even the main deck now is because before people it was sort of one build, mostly as far as the creature suite. Now we're seeing changes in that even, but those are obviously also meta-dependent decisions. And as a result of this, you could see mono red sometimes playing Chandra, Spitfire, and Emberhauler, or sometimes not, or sometimes playing Shino Pyromancer. So, you know what I mean? Mono red has a lot of ways you can build it that are all pretty powerful, and they're just going to be dependent on how things line up in the metagame. So, yeah, I mean, mono red's not going anywhere. Whether this list remains just depends on changes to how people adapt. But I mean, mono red will adapt in return. It always seems to in this format. It just has so many powerful options. So I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah, another one of these decks that's been performing well recently that took 3rd place in this tournament has been Teamer Elementals. There's been a lot of talk about it, various different builds on this strategy. The version of the deck that did the best this past weekend was going a little harder on your elemental synergy with cards like Creeping Trailblazer, Living Twister, Overgrowth Elemental. What do you guys think about this build of the deck as compared to a more, I guess, mid-range build that focuses less on your elemental synergies?
Yeah, you're more ramp deck. There's basically ramp versions and then tribal versions. So my experience, I lose to the tribal versions and not the ramp versions. Because the ramp versions just seem like worse versions of Bant Ramp. And if you're playing Bant Ramp, you will beat them every time. If you're playing Mass Manipulation versus the Hydroid Crisis Elementals version decks with like Nissa and everything, you will beat them every time. However, if you're playing Mass Manipulation versus the tribal-based ones, things that play like Creeping Trailblazer or Overgrowth Elemental, you're probably going to lose because you'll lose to Chandra.
Which Chandra?
Acolyte.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I guess with your Creeping Trailblazers, this is similar to how...
It's just too aggressive. It's too fast.
Yeah, 4 damage for free is a lot.
And if they have a Risen Reef, and they have Lightning Strikes and Shocks, like they just actually kill you super fast. So like Mass Manipulation isn't good against them. Whereas, or if you're just playing like the Leyline of Abundance decks that we talked about, like green blue, you're gonna smash the regular Elementals version because you're just way bigger than them.
Yeah.
Like the lists that just play like Hydroid Crisis, like, oh no, they're gonna play a 4/4 Crisis like on turn 8. It's like, okay, I'm gonna play an 18/18 Crisis on turn 4. Right? So they can't go over to the top of you. Those elemental decks are too fair. However, the tribal elemental decks can get out of control very, very, very quickly. Like it doesn't take much for them to just play Creeping, right? They play Creeping on turn 2 and to just Chandra attack you for 6. Like that's already pretty rough. And then that's like their weakest two cards.
I haven't played against it much, but like I knew Risen Reef was good, but actually getting buried by it is a different feeling.
Yeah. Oh, it's something else.
Especially when like they play one and you're like, okay, whatever. It's cycled. That's annoying. Done a removal spell for it. Then they play a second Risen Reef and that one draws 2 cards. When was Divination a 1/1?
Or it just ramps.
Yeah, that too. That's better than drawing cards.
Yeah, when it ramps on 3, you're like, uh-oh. Because you're just getting cavaliered the next turn. And if you get cavaliered on 4, it's just... Cavalier is a card that should be in every single green deck, by the way, regardless of elemental or not. Am I right on this?
Yeah. Yeah, Cavalier is incredibly powerful.
Like I was playing with Gates and Golos. I went down to 2 or 3 Golos, maybe 2 by the end, and just played 4 Cavalier. Yeah, this is just better.
Yeah. I don't know. The one thing I don't really like about the more aggressive builds of Teamer Elementals is that you're playing Leafkin Druid, which like just seems kind of out of character for what this deck is trying to do.
Yeah, exalt other guys' attack.
Yeah, and this card just doesn't.
It does attack. You have Creeping Trailblazers.
Yeah, but like...
It attacks for 1.
Okay.
That's as much as a Llanowar Elf.
I mean, yeah, having mana is still really important for you, though.
I can see that, but I don't know. I feel like there's just something else you could be doing with that slot just to lean in a little bit more to your aggressive game plan.
Yeah.
That's like my only comment on the deck. The only thing I don't really
Yeah,
like.
I don't even know what it would be, though. You know what I mean?
There's probably room for experimentation there. What's the activation cost on Living Twister?
A green and...
1 and a red.
One
Okay.
and a red,
Because
yeah.
there have been games where like the extra mana from them having 4 creatures that their Leafkin Druid produced let them activate their Creeping Trailblazer twice. And so then it just became like a must chump block, can't trade.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, like you do have mana sinks in Creeping Trailblazer and Living Twister.
And like
And
you do have
Chandra
6
6
drops and
Yeah.
Chandra Awakened Inferno too.
it lives through Chandra 6. And like if they're dealing with everything else because this can't attack, like later Omnas playing lands can still pump it because it's an elemental.
I'm not sure. I haven't played a lot with the more aggressive versions of elementals. It just kind of seemed a little out of place to me. And
Yeah, there might be something else. I haven't thought about it.
but
I think that deck's actually quite strong, though.
mm-hmm.
I think it's better than the sort of like slower Nissa versions, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or I shouldn't say slower, because they're not actually slower.
Yeah.
But the ramp versions, you know what I mean? Just a bunch of dorks and Hydro Crisis. Just because I feel like those versions are more vulnerable to getting taken advantage of by other decks. Like, you just never beating mass manipulation. The other problem is, I think like feather decks can punish you a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, notably, the versions of the deck that I've seen that aren't as aggressive don't really have much in the way of removal spells.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, I think you want like Lightning Strike and Shocks. Because if, you know, like those decks can't stop this person or other decks from ramping, but the tribal versions can because they have Lightning Strike and Shock, so they can blow up Llanowar Elves and other Leafkin Druids, and they can shock a Risen Reef. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that level of interaction matters a lot. Yeah, I think Shock is maybe like insane right now. Right? Kills Llanowar Elves, kills Risen Reef, kills Teferi 3 that's minused. It kills just like a whole bunch of cards that are really important to get off the board.
Kills a lot of the, we haven't talked in depth about vampires, but it kills a lot of the cards there.
Yeah, it kills a lot of vampires. It kills Hero of Precinct 1. Like, if you look at this top 8, it kills the guy out of Feather, the 2-mana 2/2 haste.
District Legionnaire.
10 District Legionnaire, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it lines up, like, if you look at this top 8, right, it kills things in every deck. That's very important for you to get off the board.
Yeah, Shock's
There's
not-
actually not a matchup here where Shock isn't extremely useful and impactful, which is funny that we live in a world where Shock is this good. But actually, in this top 8, if you look, Shock is very important.
Yeah.
Having said that, I would just build my deck to not lose to Shock, but instead of play Shocks. But
Yeah.
it lines up pretty well here.
Yeah. We saw 2 copies of Vampires make this top 8, 4th and 5th place. The builds are pretty similar when you look at them. Removal spell suite is pretty close. Big difference being the 4th place list is playing 8 Planeswalkers, Avona main, whereas the other one is a little more low to the ground. It has more 1-drops, plays a few copies of Sanctum Seeker to take advantage of said 1-drops, but I'm not sure.
It's also really, Sanctum Seeker is also really good with Knight of the Ebon Legion.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it, right? Is that you can make these like kind of miserable attacks if worse comes to worse with, let's say, your 4 Vicious Conquistadors to maybe flip a Legion's Landing, plus you have Sanctum Seeker, which can then trigger your Knight. Like this version, the 5th place version by Dustin Taylor, is probably much better actually at at putting counters on Knight of the Ebon Legion. I mean, it doesn't really matter. You can often just do it with the Danto Vanguard and something else, right? Because the Danto Vanguard will do it for you.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I like Zach Keeney's version a little bit better. I like the planeswalkers. You're diversifying your threat a little more. And we talked about in this pre-show, I hate Vicious Conquistador. I do not think that card is
I
playable.
also think it's bad. I'm just saying it's better at enabling Knight, which it 100% is. His deck is better at enabling Knight, but I think Vicious Conquistador is unbelievably bad. I also ranted on the pre-show that I don't understand how you justify playing 3 Legions landings, but the 4th Vicious Conquistador. But hey, what do I know?
Yeah, I don't know. Vampires is not a deck I've really played it. I actually haven't played it at all.
Oh, I've played it. It's nuts. Let me tell you, when you just like soar into a Champion of Dusk.
Yeah, I've played against it.
Yeah, it feels insane. You're like, I'm just cheating.
Yeah.
Like, this is absurd. Like, I've had a game where I went like turn 1 Knight, turn 2 Legion's Landing, another 1-drop, and then just the next turn soaring into Champion. And I was like, oh, this game is just completely over. Like, there's
Just a lot of cards.
Yeah, there's just nothing anyone can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost life, right? So I
Oh, yeah. What does that matter?
Knight.
Don't they have to lose life? Or
Read
is
the
it
card.
anyone?
Read the card. It's right there.
If a player. Oh, geez. I thought
That's
it was
why.
your opponent.
That's why I said Adonto Vanguard and Knight are
Ooh. I thought you just meant that like they had 4 power together
no.
for your
No.
opponent. Oh, that's insane.
Yeah.
I thought it had to be your opponent.
No.
It does not.
Oh,
Yeah, this card's good.
what a flexible knight.
Yeah.
What a good dude.
Yeah. No, it's actually insane. Like I've been playing a lot of Knight of the Ebon Legion, and it's just so easy to enable. Actually, like this was a card we had on our top 10.
Yep.
We were pretty accurate on our top 10 this time. Holy jeez.
We're pretty good when it comes to our top 10s, actually.
And we didn't even pick cards that were obviously going to see standard play. We picked cards that were sweet that could enable new archetypes. Turns out
There's some sweet new archetypes. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is one of them. But yeah, no, Knight is like very easy to enable in these decks and in a lot of decks, and it gets out of control very easily. Like the times because you said you've played against it but not with it, the times you lose to it, like you probably lost to a Knight that had 2 or 3 counters on it, right?
Yeah, Knight's very good. I usually Sorin is the one consistent card I lose to all the time. Yeah, it's
But Knight does legitimately get out of control, right? Like the threat of the pump is legitimately terrifying too, right? Yeah.
it's a very tough card to deal with for sure. But I don't know. Do you think this deck has legs in the format? Do you think it has much staying power going forward?
Yes. I think it's a fine aggro deck that also can play a mid-range game. That can go late, that can go long. Black-white currently in Standard has excellent sideboard options. Like being able to play D-Spark, Noxious Grasp is obviously one of the biggest ones. But I think more importantly, you have Duress and all that. More importantly, though, not in these sideboards. If you wanted, because one of these versions plays 8 Planeswalkers, you can play Oath of Kai in your sideboard for mono red, because I think the mono red matchup for the version that they're both playing is actually pretty bad. Like the mono red matchup here isn't good. It's not horrible, but it's probably favored for mono red.
Yeah.
But it's easy to make your sideboard.
There's a decent amount of cards in black-white that you could play that to swing that matchup more in your favor for sure.
Yeah, you don't need much, You just need a few things. You can play Basilica Bellhaunt if you want, you know what I mean? Like, you have so many options in black-white that sort of allow you to beat mono red. Plus, I mean, you can still steal any game from mono red by just Sorin.
Yeah.
Right? Like Sorin lifelink and just attacking with Adonto Vanguard and just making the life trade for it, and they can't really do anything, and lots of options. Like it's close. Maybe the matchup's not as bad as I haven't really played against it much. Most of the times I just play against like dirty mid-range decks or elemental decks when I play vampires, and that matchup's pretty good.
We had one ramp deck in this top 8 as well. Bant Rep.
This deck is sweet.
Not really much in the way of new cards when it comes to it. We have Voracious Hydra in the main deck, and then, Devout Decree, one Shifting Ceratops in the sideboard. That's about it. Bant Ramp, I guess, it's just still one of those decks that can cheese you out.
I think this deck's still good.
Yeah.
I also like the Shalais.
Yeah.
I think the Shalai is really good because you just want to protect Teferi, right? Like, keep your Teferi alive long enough to let you start casting anything you want at instant speed. Also, this guy plays the same split I do of spells. Whenever I play the green-blue ramp decks or mind control decks, I always play 1 Entrancing Melody, 3 Mass Manipulation. Sometimes you got to get them early with the Entrancing Melody. No, I'm serious, man. I play the exact same split as this guy, so big fan and big shout out for this. Also, I am curious because I haven't played it. I do want to try the Voracious Hydras because they're probably pretty good in this deck and just buy you enough time. Because Bant Ramp is a deck that, I mean, if it goes long enough, it's going to win.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
things have to go pretty bad for it to lose. And Shalai giving that extra protection against like the Esper decks, I think is very important.
Yeah, Bant Ramp's one of those decks that has probably one of the scariest late games in the format.
Yeah, I think it's the scariest, right? I'm trying to think of something scarier I can't think of.
Yeah, I mean, massive Hydroid Crisis, massive mass manipulations. Like, yeah, there's not much worse.
Right. Like, it's just the two biggest X casting haymakers, right? Like, this is just an X deck.
Yeah.
X gonna give it to you. You got Voracious Hydra, Hydroid Crisis, Mass Manipulation, Entrancing Melody. It's all X cards and Ramp.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's not to love about this? Not sure how I feel about the sideboard. Deputy of Detention seems medium to me.
Yeah.
Ixalan's Binding is a card that I'm always scared of playing. I feel like you can get punished randomly by so many things. I've always been so scared of playing it recently in Standard because A, you could get to Ferried and then you just feels miserable. Sure, you get to replay it, but you lose tempo. Well, you lose a lot of tempo and time. You don't see a lot of Vivians right now, which I find strange. But if there's Vivian 5s, then you just get crumpled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Vivian 5 has kind of disappeared entirely.
Yeah, it'll be back. I mean, there's no way it's people experimenting with new cards. Vivian 5's insane. Mm-hmm. That card is just it's still a top 5 planeswalker.
Vivian 5 has to be fantastic in Elementals decks, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, why?
I don't understand why they don't play
that card is nuts with Elementals, actually.
People stopped playing it when they all adopted and realized how good Nissa was.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true.
So I guess they just to go back to their old waifu.
Yeah, maybe Nissa is just better. You know what I mean? It's tough to say.
Well, I mean, the versions of the deck that are a little more aggressive aren't playing Nissa.
Yeah.
But I think if you are going to play a 5-mana Planeswalker and in your aggressive deck, you should probably just play Nissa if you're comparing the two.
Yeah.
So
it's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nissa is wild. Plus, it's an elemental, so you get all your bonuses. You know what I mean in the travel decks. So, yeah, rip Vivian. Hey, she was just too fair and honest.
She was good in early Standard.
Yeah.
When everyone was fighting in a sportsmanlike manner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that pretty much wraps up all the decks in the top 8. But we wanted to talk a little bit more about decks that we've been seeing perform well recently, or decks that have been talked about a lot. One of the notable ones that I've seen a lot of talk about is those Simic Flash decks with Night Pack Ambusher, which is one of the cards we mentioned as an honorable mention from our top 10 that, Adam, you were really high on.
Yeah, this was a card I was certain would see play. It just didn't make our top 10 for whatever various reasons. Although it was a card that I thought would probably inspire an entire archetype, I shouldn't say inspire an entire archetype because Frilled Mystic decks already existed. But people sort of just went more all in on this strategy. And I said, this sort of puts you in the lock that old Fairies decks is obviously not as powerful. We're not looking at things like Bitter Blossom that just sit there and accrue advantages. But it puts you in a weird lock of, oh, okay, well, do they have Frilled Mystic? Or are they just going to flash in another creature? Like, can I afford to, you know what I mean? You just get put in this bind of decision-making that is a lose-lose. Like, nothing is good. And you're just gambling on what they might have. And you have no idea what's happening. This deck plays a bajillion counterspells, so it doesn't really matter. You just can always assume they have it. But that's the sort of free wins. And I think this is sort of one of the things we want to talk about is that although this deck wasn't in the top 8 in recent results, it's not in the top 8. It's a deck that's been lurking on the margins for quite some time. Yeah. And it's a deck that has free wins. If it does go, Brineborn Cutthroat into sort of counter your guy, Night Pack Ambusher on your end step, and just leave up counter magic for the rest of the game and just lock you out with counter magic. Similar to how Mono Blue has free wins in doing the same thing with Curious Obsession. Mm-hmm. This deck has the power level, though, to compete against other creatures. Although I feel like we reach a place where we abandon the sort of early plays and leaning on Syncopates, Unsummons, Negates, Essence Scatter, Sinister Sabotage. I actually think we reach a place where we move away from these because I think these are actually kind of junky spells. They're win more one-sided decks. So there's been an uptick in Nexus being played again.
Yeah.
Because there's been a decrease in the amount of Teferis being played. Mm-hmm. Teferi 3 is just basically unbeatable. I mean, it's not for Nexus, but it feels that way a lot of the times.
It's another card that Simic Flash just has a really hard time dealing with as well.
Yeah, exactly. But this deck is sort of really well positioned against Nexus and a few other matches that it has basically free wins against. Like, this deck can't lose to control.
Yeah, you'd have a real hard time losing in control.
It's
outside of them having a Teferi early that they can protect.
Yeah,
right?
Which they can't protect because you just flash in a creature in response to them playing Teferi and kill Teferi, you know? Like, it's, or they bounce. Like, it's just not going to get anything, but you can always counter it. But this is just win more against control. And I think to be good against the field, they're going to have to morph into what I think they will, which is a Bant Flash version of this. That, you know, the Bant Flash decks with Vivian and Oketra, like Vivian 3.
Yeah.
The one that grants your creatures Flash.
Yeah, that we saw early on in War of the Spark Standard.
And that deck was, at one point, the tier 1 deck in the format.
Yeah, it had like a week or a week and a half when it was, it was pretty good.
And it was still fine after that. It was never horrible. It was never unplayable. People just moved away from it for various reasons. One of those reasons actually being mass manipulation.
Yeah, mass manipulation decks and the Command the Dreadhorde decks just kind of went way over the top of you.
Right.
And you had a hard time with the Planeswalker-based decks as well.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that it's possible with Nightpack Ambusher that we might see a resurgence in the sort of mid-range Bant Flash decks that... Now, you know, you can still play Frilled Mystic, you can still play Nightpack Ambusher, but you can have a little more power and security in Teferi. You can play your own Teferis. So I think this is a deck that I wanted to mention and talk about because I think it's on the come up. I think versions of this deck will see play. I think they probably abandoned sort of Brandborn Cutthroat and Spectral Sailor. Brandborn Cutthroat is quite good, and Spectral Sailor is also quite good. I just think they're a little underpowered for what this deck could be doing as a build. And I'd like to see it get ahead on mana somehow if it's going to play Nightpack Ambusher and Frilled Mystic. So I would prefer, and I don't like Merfolk Trickster in it. I would just prefer to see them play something like Bant Flash or with Vivians and just accrue a sort of mid-range advantage with Nightpack Ambusher.
Go less all in on your whole Flash game plan.
Yeah.
This is sort of the general pattern that we see, though, when cards are adapted into new brews or when people try out sort of, as we were saying, cards that could spawn an archetype, is the initial lists are always all in. Like, this is very clearly, Nightpack Ambusher wants me to play on my opponent's turn. Every creature in the deck has flash, and then I play counterspells. Like, it's a very straightforward approach. And then if that straightforward approach works to a reasonable degree, then people start, you know, dialing back from being so all in and adapting the strong card into other strategies. So for where we are in the format, it's completely reasonable that this is where the deck is at.
Yeah, that's a really good point. But I think this is a deck people should, like, experiment with and play and get used to having to sort of learn to play around. I think this deck sticks around. I think Nightpack Ambusher and this style of play, a lot of the creatures in this deck are all staying after rotation. You know, you lose some of the spells will swap out, but there'll be replacements for these. You know, there's definitely going to be no shortage here of this deck and style of deck sticking around. So I would consider this a deck that is on the come up and one that could end up being very powerful.
Get your wolf tokens now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I definitely agree that Nightpack Ambusher has a lot of potential outside of just this specific strategy. And I think people are just kind of recently been really locked into going all in on it.
I could legitimately just see that card being played in mid-range Jund. You know what I mean? Where you're playing removal. So you flash in Ambusher, and then on your turn you don't play anything, and on their turn you use your removal spells like Assassin's Trophy or Cast Down or whatever, you know, and you get this wolf. And they're 3/3 wolves. I mean, this 4 mana, 7 power. For a mid-range deck, that's what you want your creatures to be able to do, is just single-handedly win the game. Those are the best mid-range creatures, right? Are Thragtusks.
Yep.
Creatures that single-handedly just win the game, you know, as opposed to Spectral Sailor, right? This creature doesn't do anything on its own, really.
Yeah.
It doesn't win the game on its own. So, you know, but Nightpack Ambusher, you could play in a mid-range deck because it's close enough on that power level.
Yeah, exactly.
So there are lots of places you can take this card. So I think it's a card that has demonstrated signs of it being on a rise as far as playability, and it's something I would consider in the future. If you're looking for a unique card to invest in and build around and experiment with, this is definitely an option.
Speaking of cards you want to invest in, if you're looking to get some new singles and play Paper Standard, where could I go?
Well, you can go to MTG Canada, wizardtower.com.
Wizardtower.com. Great sponsor of this podcast since day one. Check them out for all your Magic single needs here in Canada. Free shipping on orders over $15. Check them out. Wizardtower.com.
It's 3-year anniversary, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's a 3-year anniversary today, right?
Coming up.
Or next week?
Is it next week?
I
I
think
think it's the end of the month.
Yeah, next week.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, next week, the 3-year anniversary.
Yeah, next week coming up. DWC 3-year anniversary.
That's nuts.
That is nuts. And on that note, want to just give a shout out to everyone who's been with us, supported the show, all our patrons. We love you all. Thank you so much for supporting the show this far.
There's been some people who've been around since the very beginning.
Yeah, we haven't figured it out yet, but we're definitely going to be doing a giveaway for our 3-year anniversary. So stay tuned for that.
We'll announce it probably tomorrow.
Yeah, either when this episode goes up or with next week's episode.
Yeah, we'll do a giveaway for our 3-year, which, yeah, is insane, actually.
Yeah. So another deck that's kind of been on the up recently that I've seen a lot of talk about is this Jund Dinos deck. Going all out on the Marauding Raptor plan, taking advantage of these really huge fatties, Galta, Regisaur Alpha, Ceratops.
Rotting
Regisaur, yeah.
Just Marauding Raptor, another honorable mention, sparking an archetype. Look at us go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we just keep doing it.
Yeah.
We just out here doing the damn
Back
thing.
to back to back to back.
I think we just have developed a very good eye for cards that will, build around. You know what I mean? That will ultimately sort of spawn and make other things playable or not playable, but bring them to the forefront.
Can support other cards that are in the format.
Yeah. So this is a card that, the Marauding Raptor, Ripjaw Raptor combo, right? You just play your Ripjaw Raptor and draw cards, which is pretty sweet. It's super aggressive. It makes up for your Rotting Regisaur discard. Rotting Regisaur just massive.
Big boy, yeah.
It's a beefy fella.
I haven't really played with or against this deck at all. How do we think about the current build? Where do you think it will go, if anywhere?
I think this is like probably as close as it's going to anything. I think this is its peak Dino. Like, because I don't think this deck's great. Like, it's fine. It can definitely cheese wins with Collision Colossus. Caleb D was the one who played this deck.
Yeah,
and I watched actually a bit of him playing it, and like you definitely would just end up cheesing people with Collision Colossus is a lot of the times what happens because your dinos are so big. I feel like this is a deck that people can adapt for very easily. This is a deck that loses to Wrath, Cast Down.
Oh yeah,
style decks, and because there's no Teferis, if there isn't Teferi, like Teferi first off is good against them. But more importantly, this is a deck that if let's say Teferi 3 goes away, I mean, that's not going to happen, but let's imagine we live in a world where that does. This deck can never beat Absorb in a billion years. Like this deck can't beat Cancel, right?
Yeah.
They're actually just stone dead to Cancel.
They'll just kill you with Shifting Ceratops.
Yeah. Well, you have Ceratops. Yeah, that's it.
But yeah, a lot of its cards are these big swingy 4 or 5 mana like creatures that have to resolve to do anything.
Yeah, and Cast Down, and like you can just flood really bad. Commune helps, but yeah, I don't know. I think this deck is fine just because the power level's so high. The Galt is so big. You can play it so early with like Rotting Regisaur. Yeah, this deck is good, no doubt. Like Dinos is a real archetype.
Yeah, it's
you just play huge, massive fatties every turn.
Yeah, it's kind of filled the hole in the meta game left by Gruul, where we don't really see green-red anymore.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Like
when was the last time you played against a green-red deck?
When's the last time you played against Rekindling Phoenix?
Yeah.
Right? That's a card that's green-red, right? Green-red. I was never a fan. I don't think any of us were big fans of that deck. It was fine. Like we all thought it was fine, but we didn't think it was nuts. Girl Spellbreaker was nuts.
That card is nuts. Yeah. Love that card.
That card's legitimately nuts. Yeah. But it lined up against the Super Friends decks. That's why it was so, you know what I mean?
It was just a 3/3 Heroes downfall.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was insane.
Great.
But this deck probably just better against a broad field, right? The dinosaur decks, just beefy boys. So I don't really see what changes. I will say they get really sweet sideboard options. Getting Noxious Grassband Fry is very good.
Man, so Veil of Summer was one that I wasn't sure how adopted it would be, but seeing a thought erasure get Veiled of Summer, that's a blowout.
Yeah, Veil. I've been Veiled of Summered a few times by, for example, the Scapeshift decks. Veil of Summered me, and I was like, huh, well, I'm just dead now. Like,
Yeah. No, like
surprisingly good. I don't know, man. I hate cards like that because they're also just, sometimes they can line up where they're just a 0. You know, this is the classic 0 and 10 card.
But that's sort of the design. Well, I mean, these other sideboard cards, you're not bringing them in anywhere that they could be a 0. So,
but Jund has very good sideboard options for this. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is probably, I have no real sort of thoughts on how this deck could improve, but it's a deck that if you're sort of playing a lot of standard, you should be, again, watching out for. Because we're kind of spending this episode talking about decks on the come up and new decks, right? And this is one you should definitely be aware of.
Yeah. Speaking of that and Scapeshift, like you just mentioned, is that a deck that you think has potential?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely do. I think other people probably don't. They probably think it's too cute or goofy. But I've lost to it enough now to respect it. To respect Teferi 3+ Scapeshift is really what it is that all the matchups, I'm like, oh, okay, well, this doesn't matter. I have X and Y to be able to beat some zombies. You know, their sorcery speed, Field of Dead, doesn't matter. And then they have a Teferi, and I'm like, oh, yeah, right. They're just going to end step Scapeshift, make 28 2/2s and attack me for, you know.
You think that's what people were missing out on in the early builds of Scapeshift? Because I saw like green-black versions with Dread Presence.
Yeah, no, it's terrible.
And I saw Gates versions as well.
Also terrible.
Just like play it with Teferi.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Because the minute, now Scapeshift just becomes Splinter Twin.
Yeah.
Right? It's Splinter Twin. It's just Teferi Scapeshift.
Yeah.
Teferi is Pestermite. Scapeshift costs 4.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's what it is. And I've never lost to any versions besides the Teferi Scapeshift version, but I've lost handily to that one.
Yeah.
Numerous times, just because it's a really big problem. And they have all this life gain lands, right? Because they put like Blossoming Sands, and Bloodfell Crypts, and all this other stupid, because they need a bunch of different land types, right? And once they sort of have 8 or 9 lands in play, you know, which their whole deck is just designed to buy time, and they resolve it to Teferi, it's a huge problem. And people don't play counter magic, and not like you can versus the Teferi Scapeshift combo anyway.
Yeah.
How you get there, how you defend yourself to be able to get there is going to be the question, right? But I think that the fact that it's essentially a 2-card combo is enough for standard success.
Yeah.
Right? Like it is essentially a win on the spot.
Pretty much.
I mean, when it happens, you're getting attacked by 20+ 2/2s. You can't have a board that stops that.
And important to note, even if it isn't figured out or fleshed out this format, none of these pieces are rotating. All these lands that they're playing, the gates, the temples, all the blossoming sands lands, none of that's leaving. And every other deck will get slower, so the need to defend itself won't be as huge.
Well, Scapeshift leaves, right?
What? Wasn't it just printed?
No, it was in the last core set.
It was in the M20 core,
so
M19 core set.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah. This is the only time we'll have it.
Yeah.
I thought it was new. No one ever played it until now.
Yeah, exactly, because it was just widely ignored until recently.
Well, there goes my point.
Yeah.
That reminds me, I got to buy some
in
paper. Got to hit up old MTG Canada here for some Scapeshifts.
Wizardtower.com.
Yeah. I'm going to go get me some Scapeshifts while they're cheap, because that card, the card's just going to go up in price again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, but are you ever going to play it in Modern?
I hate that deck, actually. You're right. I played it once. I remember I 6-0'd a Saturday event at a premium event at Tower, some GPT or something. I don't know, old school Grand Prix qualifier or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just I won the whole thing. I played 6 rounds of Swiss, and then I just smashed the top 8. And the whole time I was just actively miserable. I was like, I hate this deck so much. It's the most brain dead deck I've ever played in my life. You just literally count. You just do basic addition, and I guess you're dead. My Titan resolved. Gotcha. It's so stupid. I hate it so much. There's literally no play to it.
Just scratching your head. What am I going to pact for?
It's so dumb. I guess I'll block, sack the secure tribe elder, resolves. They're
didn't see that trick coming.
Cut, it's so it's just so brain dead. You just do the exact same thing over and over. It's so linear. I actually hate it so much. Yeah, you're right. I'm not buying it. It was more an MTG #MTG finance, which is ruining the game. But Yeah, I think I did make one play with that deck. I think I told Cam about it. I was like, I actually did have a sweet play where like,
Yeah, you use some Valakut triggers to kill creatures that could potentially combo off next turn.
yeah, and then he did have the combo, and he was like, you like broke up my combo. So like I could have waited a turn and just had lethal, or I could break up the combo. And I was like, I can't. Like he only had like one card left, and it was exactly to finish the combo. So I was like, like not gonna risk it and just, I mean, you're not gonna kill me anyway. Like.
So you're saying you thought about your plays?
For like once the entire day, I made a non-linear play. It was literally across like 9 rounds, including a top 8. It was the one decision where I didn't make a linear, just a linear combo choice.
That's actually more impressive than playing well all day, because not just autopiloting after winning by autopiloting all day to be able to snap out of that.
Yeah,
that's more impressive than like having thought all day.
Yeah, it was like round 4 or 5.
Yeah, wow, you're amazing.
Yeah. Man, it was like, man, stupid Phil's fault. Phil was like, yeah, but Titan's sweet. He convinced me to play the deck. And I was like, yeah, the deck is sweet. Like I won, but I hate it.
Can you imagine?
Thanks, I hate it.
Can you imagine what type of card they would have to print that would earn Phil love away from Titan?
Not happening. I mean, people just love that dumb card.
Right, but like,
I think that card should be banned. I hate that card.
Right, for Titan?
Yeah. Every deck it's in is like miserable.
Let's go play EDH. It's banned there.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, why?
Because it gets lands, dude.
Oh.
People hate that stuff in EDH.
It's not like it gets soul
It
rings.
gets 2 lands.
Yeah, because like nuts lands there, right?
Yeah. Well.
Do you go get Lotus Veil?
Speaking of Lotus, I saw a sweet, there's a new Lotus Field Storm deck that's been floating around in Modern, that your rituals are just 1 mana untap target land.
What?
Like Twiddle. 1 mana untap a permanent.
Oh,
I
so you're
see.
not playing Desperate Ritual and everything. You're playing
No,
Twiddle.
your rituals are just
yeah,
1 mana blue cards that untap your
yeah,
Lotus Field.
Yeah.
Then you just pop up with Passive Flames and Grape Shot.
Okay, that's pretty funny, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw Eli Cassis streaming it last night, actually. It looked pretty good. He was smashing people.
Huh. That's interesting, yeah.
Because, I guess then your like rituals are working as if you had an Electromancer. So in either case, you need some card that sticks around, but your Lotus Field is hexproof, so like your opponents can't do anything about it.
Yeah. So even though Scapeshift's rotating out, though, I think that Field of Dead is like still going to see play. That card is really obnoxious. Have you played against it yet?
I played against it, once, and like, had I not had frenzy turns as good as I did, the zombies would have eventually overwhelmed me. Because even just getting to the late game, it comes to a point where like, just every land is a 2/2.
Yeah, and the problem is when they have 2 of them, right?
Oh yeah, and then every land is 2 2/2s.
Yeah.
It's many zombies.
It can get really out of control.
Also, you only need, I misread it at first until Arena taught me how this works. You only need 7 different names in play, and then lands you play, any land, even if it's a multiple, make zombies. Doesn't have to be a new name.
Yeah, there's definitely something there. I don't know. I think like you said, though, the best version of that deck are the ones that are going to be playing Teferi. I think people just haven't been ignoring that.
Right. Like you said, the most of the versions I've saw as well are the sort of just green, black, whatever, these bad brews, right?
Yeah.
But why? Why play fair with this? Just make it a prison control deck up until you just Scapeshift them at instant speed and kill them in one shot. You don't have to grind them out, right? Like just go for the free win. Yeah. So I think that's the way to do it. Speaking of free wins and these cheesy strategies, something else in Standard that I want to bring up as sort of the last deck strategy and all these things we've talked about today. Mm-hmm. What is one of the recurring themes in every single deck and sideboard throughout this, every deck we've talked about, every deck we look at, is that there's no graveyard hate.
No.
I think there is space somewhere in Standard. I don't know yet what it looks like, but I do believe there is space for graveyard decks to exist, some form of Reanimator or some form of graveyard synergy, because there are a lot of enablers right now. There are tons of things going on with the graveyard in a huge Standard set, and they're not really being used. And I'm looking all the way from, something like Azoni, which is just a long forgotten card.
Yeah.
That is incredibly powerful.
Wow, I haven't seen that card in forever.
Right, but it's insane.
And that card was nuts.
It's still nuts. And there's more enablers now. It's just one of those cards I think that people just forgot. Mm-hmm. And there are potentials here that I think the ceiling is very high on something like that. All the way back to cards like what was the one that the person was playing in the hero deck? The Lich?
Tombbound Lich.
Tombbound Lich.
Yeah.
That's a draw and discard,
Yeah.
which is an enabler that I think is very powerful with even something like a Zoni. But more importantly is an enabler for various reanimate spells, which, there are a lot now, I think, of scary targets to bring back. So there's the 5-mana sorcery that is return a creature from your graveyard and it gains haste. Maybe it's any graveyard. I can't remember. So I lost to somebody doing that and bringing back the 7-mana Dino that when it attacks, deal 4 to a target and 3 to up to 2 other targets.
It's a dragon.
It's a new dragon, right?
What's its
The
name?
7-mana dragon.
Yeah, let me find
It's
it.
like Dusk.
It just got some weird name.
It's like Dusk something.
I'll find it.
Yeah, and so bringing that card back, reanimating that was very, very powerful. There's lots of reanimation targets now that I think are better. So before, we could only bring back like a Talpa or something stupid that wasn't even good.
Yeah, whatever the big white dino was.
Just, they're all
That
pretty
is a
bad.
Talpa, yeah.
But now we can bring back the mind control card as well, the Agent of Treachery,
Yeah, that's a
because
good one.
it's not gain control of target permanent until it leaves the battlefield. It's just gain control of target permanent. So a lot of people originally talked about playing Felis, Broker of Blood. I don't think that card's actually great for reanimating, but I think if we're talking about the 5-mana sorcery that makes something have haste, then yeah, Drakuseth, like Maw of Flames, the 7-mana red dragon, legendary dragon. It's, whenever it attacks, it deals 4 to any target and 3 damage up to 2 other targets. So
Nuts.
yeah, it's absurd. If that's your turn 5, you're playing a 7/7 haste that deals 4 and 3. Like, this actually is busted out of control. And there's no graveyard hate. Nobody's stopping you from doing this. Also, Teferi 3 is the reason nobody plays counter magic. You don't have to worry about counter magic. And this doesn't care about Teferi 3.
Yeah.
Like,
It's like a sweet spot in the metagame that these type of strategies can take advantage of right now.
right. Like, I think graveyard decks are really, really well positioned. How you build them is going to be the issue, but
Is this the point where we can go back to Command the Dreadhorde strategies, you think?
yeah, I think you can also just get away with this. But the thing is, this isn't even bad against Command the Dreadhorde. What are they going to do? Take your 7-mana guy and take that much damage? At this, and also you're going to outrace Command the Dreadhorde. You're too fast as the Reanimator deck, right?
Yeah, you're right. It's probably a good point in the metagame for decks that aren't going the Command the Dreadhorde route, like just straight up Reanimator without command, because there's not a lot of other actual command decks floating around that can just really punish you for going all in on your graveyard.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you hit them with a Drakuseth, on turn 4 or 5 and kill some of their creatures, I mean, they can't command anymore. They took 11.
Yeah.
You deal 4 to them and attack them for 7. They took 11. They can't command the Dreadhorde.
That's a lot of damage.
Just die on the spot. You just hit them for 11, then 11.
Remember Glorybringer?
You know what I mean? Because this goes face,
Yeah.
right? Like reanimating this and just attacking faces, they're dead in 2 attacks. And also they lose their whole board probably.
Mm-hmm.
And also Tombbound Lich lets you buy time. It's a blocker. It has Death Touch, right?
Yeah. Lifelink, Death Touch.
Lifelink.
Like that's nuts. So Grixis Colors, like you can play Grixis Reanimator.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, if you don't want to play Grixis Reanimator, you can just play mid-range Reanimator decks with Cavalier of Thorns.
Yeah.
You just put stuff in your graveyard and then reanimate it. Like, play a Zoni, play Cavalier with a Zoni, play green-black Cavalier, a Zoni, Stitcher Supplier, or whatever. I don't know what it looks like, but
You could do Molder Hulk builds as well.
yeah, absolutely. Especially with Cavalier, it's insane.
Mm-hmm.
So you start getting things back that you need without having to worry too much about it. Get back your Memorial to Follies. I think these graveyard decks are very well positioned. Also, Zoni lines up really well against a lot of the Planeswalkers and Teferis and everything, right?
Yeah. It's a lot of tokens.
Yeah.
And it's so spread out that, like Teferi Bounce
I think
can't
this,
answer that card.
yeah, I think finding right now, if you're looking to brew or you're looking to experiment, and I don't see this as just like dumb brews. I think this is a well-positioned attack you can make on the metagame that actually lines up very well and gives you free wins. Like, I think this is a space where people don't have answers. What are people playing for Graveyard Hate? Like, actually nothing.
No, there's none of it floating around. There's options,
Yeah.
but no one's playing it.
Right, because nobody's doing something like this. It's just wide open. And I don't think that this strategy is necessarily bad. Yeah, sure, getting your Drakuseth bounced by Teferi, sure, whatever. That's going to suck. But the reanimation spell I'm talking about gives haste, right? The one from War of the Spark. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the 5-mana one from War of the Spark. It's return a creature from your graveyard to play. It gains haste until end of turn.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called either, but
I mean, 5 mana is not that bad.
No.
And the Tomebound Lich gives you an insane enabler. Lets you dig for pieces. You can play Chart of Course, Tormenting Voice.
Yeah, there are cards.
There are no shortage of possible options, and there are. You can play the rule of 8, right? There are at least 2 different creatures you can reanimate in Grixis colors that are worth reanimating that you can pay. That you can play, sorry. So you play 2 copies, 4 copies of each, 2 different cards, 4 copies of each. And same with reanimate spells. There's 2 reanimation spells for you to play. So there's always options.
Well, there's more than that.
Well, there's way more than that, but I'm saying like you want 8, right? Just for consistency's sake. You want to be able to always have it on turn 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And this enables you to do that. So I think that this is a real consideration. I'm probably going to go home actually immediately after talking about this and brew up a bunch of reanimator decks.
I played against a blue-black reanimator deck recently that was playing Agent of Treachery as a target, stealing my Teferi.
Yeah, those are the 2 you play. You play Dracuseth and Agent.
Yeah.
That's nuts, actually.
Also with the...
Wait, don't you just play Dungeon Geist too in the main as like a way to buy time, or Chupacabra, or like, you know what I mean? Like, you're Grixis. Like,
Scholar of the Ages as well. Just pick up your reanimation spells that you've milled over during the game. Just pretty consistent shell.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's all you need. Right? Like the reanimation decks of old that were good just needed consistent ways to constantly be reanimating.
Yeah.
You know? ABR. Always be reanimating. Like you want to know, like that's what it is. You have to make sure you bury them. You don't just reanimate one thing and hope that's enough. You keep doing it every turn until they surrender, right? This is the Unburial Rites strategy with Angel of, what was that crazy Angel? The one that exiled 3 things?
Serenity.
Oh, that thing was nuts.
That thing was nuts.
That deck was legitimately off the charts.
So good.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Like actually just unbelievable.
Man.
We're not going to reach that power level.
Yeah. I mean, Unburial Rites was just...
Unburial Rites was too good. Like actually just too good. That card should never, the power level on that card is just through the roof.
You just always could reanimate something because
always
even
be
when it was in your
reanimating.
graveyard, like
ABR.
But yeah, you had like Arbor Elf and Elvish Mystic as well, and that deck just 8 1-mana dorks, like
and 4 acidic slimes. So that if you had the play, you just in the mirror. That's how you won. You just pound their lands before they could play anything, and then you just reanimate stuff.
Just turn 3 playing acidic slimes, killing their second
and then Restoration
land drop.
Angel hits. They kill their land again.
Thrag Tusk.
Dude, you know that was my favorite deck. I'm all about pounding people's lands.
Let me read that reanimation spell you got. Doesn't bring back lands, does it?
Yeah, exactly.
That deck was one of my favorite decks I've ever played in Standard.
It's still one of my favorite decks.
It was,
and that Standard was so diverse that I didn't even play it that much. Like I played so many random different things in that format.
Dude, I don't even know what I was thinking back then, but I definitely played a couple PTQs without that deck when it was legal, and I don't know why I did it. So dumb.
Yeah, just trolling. But anyway, I think graveyard decks, though, are worth a serious consideration. They might be too inconsistent. They might be too slow, but the power level is there, and nobody is expecting it. Right?
Yeah.
Thoughts on that? I don't know if that seems crazy, but
I agree.
Yeah.
It's a reasonable take.
All right. Thank you all for joining the club this week. Make sure, as always, you check out wizardtower.com for all your Magic single needs. If you want to support the show, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/DWC Podcast. We're also on Twitter at DWC Podcast 1 or the Disorganized Wizards Club Podcast on Facebook. And however you listen to the show, whether it's on Podbean, iTunes, any podcast app, leave a review, share it with your friends. Everything helps keep this thing growing and bring it to new listeners. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you all next week.
Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.